everybody, it's Steve Cook coming to you from the dungeon. Not really a dungeon. This is the Premier Guitar headquarters, Nashville, Tennessee. Talking to you today about the Ampeg PF-50T. PF, Portaflex. Now, history lesson. Ampeg used to make Portaflex heads, which would flip inside of the cabs. The flip top B15, B18, B18N. And these were low wattage, great amps. They've become sort of the staples in studios all over the world, especially here in Nashville. And so they've since sort of come back out with the Heritage series, which is the B15 flip top. And they've been making a bunch of stuff with tubes and a bunch of stuff sort of calling on to the Portaflex series. Well, there was a gap, I think, between like the high wattage stuff and the low wattage stuff, and they sort of bridged the gap a little bit with this guy right here. So we've got the PF-50T, which is a really cool, let me say it one more time, really cool bass head by Ampeg. So look at this right here, and it's kind of like what they did with the Mustang and the Charger and the Challenger when they came back out with these things. So you've got, you know, sort of the vibe of the old 60s thing going on with the chicken head knobs and the controls that you're familiar with. But then they sort of streamlined it. They used today's technology. They've sort of souped up the engine a little bit. And then you've got an amp that sounds really good. Of course, it's not 60 years old, so it's not going to have all the rattles and the problems and the issues. And of course, there's that argument over, you know, quality, and we can talk about that all day long, but we're not going to talk about that now. Just put that in the comment section. We'll talk about that later. But right here, PF-50T. So this is a 50-watt head. It could run at either 4 ohms or 8 ohms. And the cool thing about running it at 8 ohms is you do not need a speaker cabinet. So it's a no-load system. So if you're at home, if you're tracking, which is a beautiful thing these days, you can set up in your apartment. A lot of guys set up in their homes, their garages, whatever. You don't need a cab. So you can just go, you know, into the back, and we'll talk about the back here in a second. And you've got some great tones that you can use silently. Very slick over here. You've got these massive transformers sticking up top, kind of like the old ones did. We've got 5 tubes, which are housed inside this housed inside the housing. I know it's redundant. Inside this little chassis right here. This gets hot, so be careful on this, or you can just set your T right here, and it'll warm it up. But we've got 2 massive 6L6s. We've got a 12 AU7 and a 12 AX7s for a little bit of tube saturation and warmth in the front end. Front panel here. As you can see, this is the normal input. I'm using an active bass today, so I've got it with a 15 dB cut. Right here is the gain. Then we've got the ultra high, ultra low, which if you're familiar with the Ampeg stuff, a lot of those amps, the amps have this. We've got bass, we've got the mid-range, we've got a 5-way mid-range selector, which varies between frequencies for you to boost or cut. Then we've got treble, and then we've got the overall master volume. So now we're going to check out the back panel on the PF-50T. It's very simple, as you can see. It is, man, I just rhymed. That was awesome. So we've got power, standby, which is what goes from red to purple. We've got your AC right here. We've got tube bias. What? Tube bias? Yep. So you take your Phillips head screwdriver. They've got indicator lights right here, so you can bias these tubes. There's instructions online. There's instructions here, so you can get the optimal performance out of your tubes, which is great because they last longer and they sound better that way. Over here, that's right, 2 DIs. This is the one with the pre and post EQ. This is the one where you can have clean or a nicely EQ'd setting or a poorly EQ'd setting, your choice. And then we've got the transformer DI, which is again basically what is being sent to the cabinet. And then the speaker out, and then you can I can unplug this because we're not load bearing. That's right. I know, it's a nice reveal. So we've got 4 ohm, 8 ohm switchable. And you have to be in 8 ohm mode for it to be non-load bearing, and you can use it on your desktop. Plug these things into your digital recording system or your Tascam, whatever you're using, and go. So anyhow, and again, you can see the nice tube glow happening here in the background. This is very hot, so again, beware. But again, very simple layout, and they've kept it nice and simple for you. Today's signal chain is very simple. This is a stock vintage Music Man bass, late 70s, and it's an active bass, of course, 9-volt system. Going into the PF-50T, we're running the DI on the back of this, and we're running the second DI, and I'll explain that in a second. And then we've also got a room mic here, miking with a Royer R121 going into an Apogee Quartet into Pro Tools. Now, the reason I mentioned two DIs, or the other DI, it's got two DIs. One is just pre and post EQ. Think about that for a second. Got it? Okay. The second one is basically the transformer DI. So it is kind of like what you're sending to the cab. Why is that important? Well, let's say you're tracking, or let's say you've got something going in front of house. You can set the DI on the first DI pre-EQ, which means you're just getting the tone of the bass and your fingers. Second one is what you're hearing in the room. So let's say you get some nice grit. Let's say you saturate these tubes, run up the gain. You've got a nice kind of gnarly thing happening. So you've got a clean, untouched, then you've got a gnarly thing. Well, if you're tracking, let's say you're great session, everything is cool. Well, you go back and all of a sudden that gnarly track doesn't really work. We need a clean bass track. Well, what do? Go back and cut it? No. We've got it clean. We've got it clean on one side. So you can blend the two. You can take that unfettered track and you can mess with it however you need, which is really unique. I mean, nobody that I've seen, it's probably out there somewhere else, but in mass production is doing this, where you can actually take the DI out of the back of the amp. And again, I'm sure some overdrives or some preamp dedicated are doing this, but I haven't seen it like this. So it's pretty cool where you can take these two signals and run them off into separate chains. And again, you can mess with this any way you need with the pre and post EQ, set your EQ. But it's really nice to have the flexibility, especially for front of house too. They don't always want to hear your garbage. They don't always want to hear what's going on, where you think is cool and what you think is hot and happening. And I'm not trying to burst any bubbles, but sometimes what is best for your ears is not best for front of house, and so they have that option to get that going as well. So it's really flexible, really cool, and we'll check that out in 1 second. But let's get to the front panel here. So we've got this kind of classic chicken head knobs. I love saying chicken head, for any Dave Chappelle fans out there. But we've got vintage styling, and right now I'm just going to leave this like this is. This is what I played on the opening bit, and it's I had to take some of this, some of the treble and some of the mid off just a little bit, because the Stingray is a very, very bright instrument. So let's kind of run through that. You still hear a little bite. Now I'm going to pull off the ultra low. And you can hear how that mid-range kind of bites out a little bit. So let's add that back in. Pull that treble down so you can get that nice. Now, granted, I was using my thumb on that and not my fingers, so it's going to sound a little bit deeper, but so that's really nice, because you get that nice, warm, big, beautiful tube sound out of that thing. Now we can get a little bit nastier. I'm going to pull this out of here. So we overdrive this a little bit. This is where the audio engineer goes nuts, gets very mad at me, but I'm going to drive this a little bit harder. So we don't want to go that way. So Portaflex, PF-50T, a lot of cool tones, a lot of cool tube stuff, a lot of cool overdrive stuff, really flexible EQ. So tube amp, really nice tube amp, and it gives you everything you need for any kind of player, really. I mean, it's going to go rock guys, it's going to go gospel guys, it's going to go country guys. It's, they're going to dig it. And you can say, well, 50 watts isn't a whole lot, but it really is enough for the gig, and it's enough for up to medium-sized gigs, because you really don't need more than this, and that tube sound is like no other. So make sure you go check it out for yourself, though. Don't take my word for it. Go down to your local store, plug in, play, and that's what it's all about. For Premier Guitar, this is Steve Cook. Make sure you check out my written review on this PF-50T, where I break it down even further. Make sure you check out all of our other review demos, our rig rundowns, our What's Perry Wearing. Again, that series hasn't happened, but I'm kind of jockeying for that. Hope you're well. I'll see you soon.
Don't forget to sign up for PG Perks, your all-access pass to exclusive gear giveaways and discounts on PremierGuitar.com.